I have a friend who's dying. I have a friend who's had a I have a friend who's had 1,000 backs turned on her by the medical system and by our country. She's the child of veterans, of people who out of duty or desperation fought for our country and bled for it, and who cannot receive the care she needs to live. She has said how she has somewhere around maybe 10 years of quality of life remaining. And she saved my life. I was going to be homeless. I was rejected by friends and family. I couldn't afford to pay the bills of anyone who said I could stay for a price, and I was kicked out because I stressed out people too much, because they're afraid I would do something to myself to make my suffering stop. And I was going to be homeless. And this person with so many more issues, tangible issues than I do, fought to let me stay. She convinced the family she was with to not only fly me out, but to live with them, and fed me and made sure I was clothed and safe, and they didn't charge a dime. She's had backs turned on her because the problems she has are so specific and unique that she is told that doctors are scared to operate because they're scared of failing and hurting their own medical records, their own performance, because they can't afford to have their career tainted by not saving someone. And the bills are so high, and they're only getting higher. There's medication that she needs, which is thousands of dollars every month. And the only reason she has them is because of what the VA is allowing them to get. It started with a brain tumor. It started with incredibly obvious health problems, physical and mental, which everyone could see. And unfortunately, due to the reality that she is a woman trying to go into the healthcare system to ask for help, she was turned away 1,000 times. She's told me stories of how she was rejected because they thought that she was just overweight. Turns out the weight was because of the chemical imbalance, because of where the tumor was, because of, I might have this wrong, I might have to put a footnote in. I think it was something about the tumor was making an overproduction of cortisol in the brain, which is the stress hormone, and it was at levels several times above the normal human amount for when someone is at peak stress, and it was happening to her every day, 24/7. So of course she gained weight. And because of that, they didn't believe her. So she was turned away time and time again. She's had some degree of help, and it hasn't made much of a tangible impact. She's had an operation done, which really did nothing. And then they admitted that it was a mistake to do it when they tried to operate on this tumor. Her problems have, just by standing, just by walking, she develops fractures in her bones. She's dislocated her hip from walking to her car. And this person who is suffering every day, who has to live in the reality of this pain and misery, went out of their way to save me. Someone who I've made it clear that I don't even want to live. But this person who so clearly does, I want to help her. So I'm adding this to the start of the video. I'm recording this after the fact. The rest of it is not nearly as important. I'm asking for help, because I realized through the course of making these, in my screaming into the void, there is an endless amount of kind people. So I'm asking you to subscribe. Not for me. There's no financial future for me here. This isn't a career path. But I'm close to 500. If I hit 500, I can have people hype the video, which is a weird system where small creators get boosted in the algorithm so people see it. And if I can get there, I can make a video just about her and the good she's done for me and others. And I can talk about the injustice of the medical system, the failures of government to help her. I could ask for donations. I want to set up a GoFundMe. I want to advocate for somebody who's done more good for me than anyone else in my life. Because I don't know if heaven or hell is real, but I know that this is real. I know that right now this is real. And as small as this platform I have may be, as small of a chance I have to make such an impact on someone, because she will need to go to incredibly specific places where she'll need to have the money, which she doesn't have, to have room to stay in the area. She might even need to travel abroad, maybe even to like Australia, to get these problems fixed. And I need to take a chance. I need to ask for help. Because this person, she saved me. She saved me because I asked for help. Because I told her of the plight that I was going through, and she just did it. So I asked her if I would be allowed to talk about some of these things. I didn't ask if I could share her name or anything like that. Maybe when I make an actual full video just about her, asking for help, asking for donations, advice, anyone. Maybe then I can talk more about it. But I just wanted to put this at the start of this one to say that I need, not for me, but for her, someone who saved my life, someone who stopped me from being homeless. I want to help her because no one else is coming to save me. Right now, no one's coming to save her. So I have to try. I have to ask and beg and plead. And if by some miracle it blows up and it does extremely well, if I can make a tangible impact, if I can know that I will die, but with the knowledge of I helped one person, beyond just being a shoulder to lean on, to complain about things apart from thoughts and prayers, if I know that I tangibly made someone's life a little easier, helped one person in any way, big or small, if I do well at it, then I'll know that for the rest of my life, I will need to continue to fight for the people that I care about against these systems that keep everyone in debt and poor, and the healthcare in what is apparently the most rich country on the planet inaccessible. I want to fight for change that matters. But right now, the only change that I can make is for one person. I want to fight for something, for someone. I want to fight for things that matter to me. But I can understand that I can't do it alone. So I need to ask if you, the most you do is just like the video, if you just watch just a little bit, just comment something nice. It doesn't matter what. If the most you do is just you just do that, it's more kindness than I deserve. If you share it to anyone, I would be so in debt to you. I'd be in debt to everyone who helped. If this doesn't work, if I fail, then at least I'll know I tried. Because I want to fight for something that matters to me. And this matters. So, this was recorded before the video that it's going to follow this, but it's not as important. I want to help my friend. And if I can help her, I will do whatever I can to help more people. I don't know how. I don't know where it would take me, but that's all I want to do. Not for me, for others. So, whatever it is you do, even if it's just watching in silence and you say nothing, thank you. If you like the video, thank you. If you subscribe, thank you. If you share it, I can't thank you enough. I'll make another video sometime soon just about this. But for now, thank you. Just for being here. Thank you for being so kind to me in all these comments. I need to pass this kindness on. There exists a place, a continent, not one of any insubstantial size, which is as dangerous as it is mundane. It has existed for as long as anyone can remember. It's well documented, it's well known. Everyone knows that nobody goes there because of the dangers, because of the magical. Everybody knows that you don't go there. Everyone knows that it is remarkably dangerous, that it is a place that nobody has any substantial documentation of. Everyone knows that this is a place people go to vanish and never come back. Written records of its discovery, of its existence, the estimated size of it have existed for as long as anyone can remember, hundreds of years. There is even some dubious accounts of people having traveled there a long time ago. However, now when people travel there, they do not come back. And when they do come back, they have nothing to show of what life there is actually like. See, the issue with this massive continent is that it seems to be frozen in time from the outside. No matter the power of the telescope, no matter the magics used to look at it, all visuals of it from outside of the invisible arcane barrier that ebbs and flows every day. See, the mystery of it does not come from, if you go there, you will be killed. It comes from a lack of understanding. It's an impossible place to understand. Not because the physics are different or the magic's within, but because information does not escape. Looking at the continent from the outside, it looks like a blurry haze. It looks like a place which is an oil canvas which was left to soak and to blur and to splotch. It looks like somebody took a wet paint over it, and from the outside looking in, you can't make out anything at all. There's hints of forests, of mountains, maybe even a city, but that is up for debate. The most peculiar thing, which is as confusing as it is mundane, it is as mundane as how the sky is blue, it is as mundane as the trees in the forest, is that information cannot escape in any way. Written records, notes, symbols drawn to try to explain in a different way, all these workarounds have been tried. But when they try to exit the continent, they are destroyed or irreparably changed in some unknown way. Documents are changed so that the words written, the ink that people use, melts off the page or distorts into otherworldly symbols that are incomprehensible, which are untranslatable, and have no consistency therein. Chiseled stones end up heating, melting, or deforming in some way that makes it illegible, or shattering entirely. And the people who exit this continent cannot remember a thing from when they came in. From the moment they pass the invisible barrier which ebbs and flows, making even being near it, being able to see the place, a very dangerous task, as you never know when you might slip in or out of the... As you'll never know if you have slipped in or outside of the barrier until you recognize the holes in your memory. They forget everything from their time inside. The things they take out from there, however, those remain. Adventurers, people with curiosity, people who have nothing left to lose go inside all the time, and while most don't come out, those who do come out often come out the same as they were. Injured, bleeding, deformed maybe from battle, but not by any magical means, but from an eventful life. They come out with riches and gold and magical artifacts they found within, at least we think they found it in there. Because when they come out, it is like they took a breath, and suddenly they were on a different boat, in a different time, in a different place, sailing back from when they came. The people who've been there for years come out with the same knowledge, the same ideas, the same thought that it is the same exact time and day as when they first entered. There are people who were born there, and those are the most horrifying stories of all. People who were born on this island and tried to make an escape. And when they do, they are immediately catatonic. These people have no records of ever existing, so the current theory is that the people who exit have had all of their memories, even from those inside the womb, destroyed, and they cease function and die, if not immediately become a bumbling mess that you cannot call a living, conscious person. And yet, people want to solve the mystery of what is happening on the continent, but with how old it is, it's mundane now. It's existed for hundreds of years, it will exist for 100 more. People know we don't go there. The studies have stopped. The people who have decided to risk their lives traveling to and back have decided that it is not worth the risk, so why go there? It's the same idea as if you saw a wooden bridge, which 1,000 people have fallen off and died before you, why would you want to travel it yourself? There is nothing on the other side. If you are not well equipped enough, or desperate, or stupid enough to go across it, for whatever is on the other end, why would you try? Thus begins the start of the adventure. The story, the developments therein, and it turns out that our characters, when they enter the barrier for one reason or another, be it trying to track down a long-lost family member, looking for riches, simply wanting to explore, or running from the law, anything, when they enter inside, they find it remarkably mundane at first. And then, as the picture comes into focus, as they get deeper and deeper into this area, which no one seems to know anything about, it comes into focus. This continent is massive. You would quickly discover that there is civilization there. There are people who've lived their entire lives on the inside who know nothing about the outside world, just as the outside world knows nothing of the inside. As you might have seen from either the title or from this now, this is the setting for a D&D campaign, which I would really like to play one day. It has inspirations from all over fiction, all over the place, which I might mention as the video goes on. But unfortunately, this is a story which I have thought of for many years, and I have doubts that I will ever be able to play it. Both from inability to find people that I feel like would be willing to play it, my personal ineptitudes with socializing, etc. But I would much rather have people know of this story, be able to take some inspiration from it, and do something with it that they enjoy, rather than just keep it in my head forever. And plus, I think it sounds cool. So, what is the setting actually like then? Before we go into any of the story, the characters, the plots within, I'd like to talk more about this place that these people would find themselves in. Well, for one, there are two major factions. There are the people on the west and the people on the east of this continent. The west looks like a lot of civilization which you might see in a place such as Baldur's Gate from Baldur's Gate. A singular, massive, sprawling city with technology which would be a bit more advanced than you might expect to see other places. Metal automatons, farming, agriculture, you will see colleges, education, all of these things, and a thriving industry dictated by a war culture. Dictated by a war economy. And I will get to that in a moment, but keep that in the back of your head as I explain this. The city itself has a lot of problems, obviously. Every good setting has issues. However, it also has a lot of positives to it as well, which give people the reason to want to stay. It is a police state, and yet education is both encouraged, and people are allowed to become whoever they want through proper invention, through the building of knowledge, personal wealth, etc. It is a place where individualism is very much cherished. It is a place where people are free to become whoever they want to be, so long as they have the intelligence to do so. On the other hand, it is deeply, deeply a non-magical place. It is not that way due to superstition. It is that way due to laws, regulations, and technology that exists only in this one place. It is things that were developed in culture, through history, and by the people voting for these policies to be put in place. Coming from a central facility, either a Capitol building or some other place, which, come up with your own idea for it, there exists a plant which has very much anti-magical properties. And from that central location, this one place where this plant grows, there are pipes that go throughout the entire city. They go along with the sewers, and they are extremely well kept and well guarded, filled with a substance that carries that anti-magical property through the entire city, in massive long stretches that spiderweb throughout the city. The reason for this is so that, one, there can be no magic allowed in this city. There can be no sorcerers, no wizards, no warlocks, nothing. But they need a way to turn it off at specific places. There are fires that break out, there are people who are injured, and unfortunately, the best way to provide those there are fires to be put out, there are people who are injured, and there are people who are capable of such magical abilities that they are the best equipped to help. People create water on burning buildings, they cast healing spells on the people who are injured, but to do so, they must use one of the telephones or a landline or some other signal to shut down part of the pipeline. Within seconds, an entire district has their magical suppression fields disabled, and the casters, the EMTs of the time, as you might say, or the firefighters, are able to use what they must, and when the problem is over, they turn it right back on. So, why does this exist, though? Why are people so superstitious about it? It comes down to the city's history. A long time ago, a very long time ago, so long ago, in fact, that a lot of the story has been muddled with different occurrences of what happened, the different people who were involved with it, but with very tangible physical evidence of the disaster left in its wake through destroyed buildings which were intentionally never repaired as monuments to the crimes committed by the wielders of magic. There was a magical sorcerer, or a wizard, or no one really knows exactly who one day laid waste to swaths of people, destroyed buildings, flew into the air, killed dozens, hundreds, thousands. They were the most powerful person the continent has ever seen before or since. Nobody knows where he came from. Nobody understands why he did what he did. Their reign lasted for only 2 months before they were killed. And they were not killed by magic. They were killed by a certain individual who also has their identity left up to mystery, who built what would be considered the first firearm ever created and shot this person out of the sky. Debate is on whether the person who made it actually pulled the trigger, who did pull the trigger. Depending on who you ask, people loyal to the crown might say it was descendant of the king, or a forefather to the king, I should say, or maybe it was a common townsfolk who took blasting powder used in the mines and decided that they had an idea. So do firearms exist? Not really. Disasters continue to happen. People continue to vote that we cannot allow magics of this capacity to ever exist again, and as legislation continued, the hate mob grew as there were lynchings of anyone who capable of magic through birth or by knowledge. It turned legislative. They built the system, they made discoveries, they suppressed the magic from their land. But what happened to the development of this firearm? A musket, basically. Well, they did get better for a time. They learned how to fire them quicker, how to make them more deadly, how to load them faster, and then there was a massacre. Multiple. And the people, having the fresh history in their mind of the man who destroyed so much of their city, once again took to the streets in protest and legislation, and they basically decided that we do not want people to have any of these devices, and we do not want them to progress in any way. So the military is left with these rifles, but they are intentionally kept pathetically weak, at least in comparison to our real-life modern standards. See, everyone still uses sword and shield and magic. There are still paladins walking the street as police. But once you get closer to the crown, once you see the metal automatons who cannot disobey orders, ones driven by their own strange electrical currents and maybe magics, nobody really knows. It's kept very tightly kept secret. That is where you'll find the guns. That is where you will find people who are able to wield these muskets. But there truly is no automatic rifle. There is nothing beyond that. Because, once again, They could be stolen or used for evil. And when you limit the amount of damage caused by them, this is what the people believed was right. This is what was put into law, and it has maintained ever since. By the way, do not take any of this into account to put into real life, okay? You can come to your own conclusions. This is my fictional setting, and I'm making no commentary on the real world. That is entirely up to you. You can draw your own conclusions from it if you want, but the things in the story, I do not necessarily believe. I think it is an interesting story. So, what are the benefits and the negatives of living in this grandiose city? Well, one of the biggest positives is it's civilized. There's businesses, there's shops, there's career opportunities, there's a marketplace of ideas, there is industry to be found. However, the negatives is that it is a surveillance state. It is a surveillance state of the highest order, not due to superstition, but due to war that has raged on for a very long time. It is also, unfortunately, constantly in a shortage of food. The city was built before the war broke out, and you simply cannot just tear down the walls of the city for defense and move all the farmlands closer or put them within the walls. People have tried to some success, but the population continued to grow and the issues continue to mount. Okay, well, that's intense, I guess, and there's probably a lot more you can expunge from it, which again, a lot of that could come down to individuals who might want to use part of that setting to make their own ideas for how could we use these magical pipes for discovering corruption, crime, or solving crime, doing all these various things. Who is the crown leader? Why are they at war? Well, they're at war with people on the East. The East is very much the opposite. They are people who are primarily composed of druids, people who praise magic, people heavily connected to nature. These people do not necessarily believe in the individualism, but instead the collective, the ability to support each other, the wanting to preserve nature. However, it is not all sunshine and rainbows. They do not have industry. They do not have most of the modern things you might imagine. They do not use much electricity, even in the slightest. And probably the most maybe alarming thing would be the use of ritual sacrifice pretty regularly. Do not confuse these people with barbarians, however. They cherish artwork. They see the beauty in life. They have a deep, deep connection with nature, the things within it, the plants, the trees, the bugs, all of it. And they feel mournful and regretful that they have to live this way because the suffering required to need it. See, somewhere along the way, they found a God who listens to them. And they have enough evidence to believe that, unfortunately, this is how the reality must be. As they want to live to be one with nature, to be one with magic, with the arts, with helping each other to make sure there are no people sick and starving on the street, they have come to the realization that our worship does get prayers, but it needs sacrifice. People are killed in ways that you might have seen the Aztecs do it. Well, you wouldn't have seen them, but you might have read it. Brutal, disgusting ways. Because when someone is sacrificed like this, their prayers are answered. The crops continue to grow, the trees remain green, the disasters are kept at the gates, which is why primarily they very much do not rely on walls. They do not rely on massive military engagements. They do not require much security, because as long as the sacrifices continue, the nature itself provides for them. The animals take up defense as if commanded by a higher power to repel invaders, people who would like to do evil. The ground opens up and swallows people from the city who try to attack. The very snakes in the ground will give their lives to bite the legs of those who try to invade, poisoning them to death before they can receive help, and the rain will continue to fall on their adversaries. Maybe a good deal, maybe not. These people are deeply religious. They worship this god, however, they recognize the cruelty and the evil and the barbarity of their actions, and they try to do everything they can to make sure that everyone who is not subject to these practices has a life in which they can flourish. They have no poverty, they have no starving people. However, the cruelty they commit is enough to make some people want to walk away. So why are these two factions at war with each other? The actual start to it, debatable. lost to history. These people have been at war for so long that maybe it doesn't even matter anymore. Because the differences in their lives and their cultures are so incompatible. The cruelty that one commits versus the other, they see the cruelty they commit as the only acceptable form of it. The cost of the way that they live is the only version of their life which is tolerable, and the others on the other side of the continent are barbarians and monsters for what they do. The people in the forest folk, I would call them. I don't have a proper name for either of these factions that I feel satisfied with. So the forest folk see the depravity of allowing people to starve in the street, allowing the hungry to continue to be hungry, the lack of care for others, the disease that people cannot pay money to get treatment for. They see the relentless destruction of the environment around them, of the forest, the trees, the environment, the pollution. They see the surveillance state created out of conspiracy and legislation, which to them seems reasonable, to the city folk seems reasonable, but they see it and they say, this is not how anyone should live. This is how people should be liberated from this. This is cruel and barbaric. We live in the trees and nature. We are one with the gods, and we find peace and happiness, and we minimize the cruelty. And the people in the city see the others, and they say, those are barbarians, people who are incapable of seeing the progression of life, the mastery of mechanics, of industry. They do not see the artistry that they make as anything worth admiring. The paintings, the poems, the plays they put on, they don't see that as truly something worth striving for. They see the accumulation of their own wealth, of philanthropy maybe, but they also see that these people, while we have suffering in our streets, they are poor and destitute, that they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, which, fun fact, in real life, look up the origin of that phrase. It's a terrible phrase used by people who hate you. They see the people starving and the people who are sick, and they see that as a consequence of life, at how there is always going to be people at the bottom, but most people live at a quality of life above that, with their own homes, with power, with electricity in most cases, or at least in some cases. They see it with security. They see that the walls we built have keeping us safe from the magical attacks from outside. They see all of these things, and they say the amount of suffering they do to these people, ours and theirs, the brutal ways in which they have killed us, the brutal ways in which they kill their own people, these people are barbarians. The suffering that we have in our own walls are the only form of suffering that we can tolerate. We need to stop these people. Well, these differences are cultural for pretty much everybody. The actual reasons at the top for war continues to be mysterious at best, propagandized at worst, where in the city, it's become a wartime economy. The people there have almost every part of their day with the thought of war on their mind and of defense and wanting to continue to strengthen the borders they have, and they are in fear of the magicians from the outside coming over to throw fireballs at them and destroy the walls once again, to commit more attacks. They're terrified of it. And so they hold each other and their families close, and they believe in strong, big governments to protect them. And that government has decided that one too many times these people have slipped through the cracks, gotten inside the city, they have sympathized with people, people have turned against our very way of life, they have decided that the cruelties within the walls are the wrong types of cruelty and have become evil and terrorists or have defected, and we cannot allow that to happen. The same goes on the other side. They see the cruelty going on there, and they say the cruelty might be more widespread, but the individual suffering is nowhere near as depraved as what we're committing. They don't see the barbarity and the skinning of people, the ritualistic throwing of people off cliffs, the poisoning, the starvation they commit on people for sacrifice. They say, this is fucked up what we're doing. This is too much for any one person to conceivably want to commit to another person, so the cruelty there must be less, and so they defect and become outcasts and killed. Now, of course, there is more to this world, more of it which is almost incomprehensible. It is starting to rain. That sucks. Regardless, actually, for the first time, I might have to record this in 2 parts. that sucks. I'll be back in a minute with a different camera angle, probably. Well, the rain stopped as soon as it started. So, what happens between these two places? Where might these adventurers go from one place to another as they try to figure out not only the start of this war, a way to resolve it, maybe, or maybe to mitigate the suffering happening with each of those borders, within each of those borders? Sometimes I feel like I can't talk when I start. Well, that's where the more fantastical parts come in. Apart from the magic happening on the east, would be things that are much more unexplainable. The wildlife, while it might be just like wildlife found in different parts of the world, would be exceedingly hostile to just about everyone, but not so much to each other. There would be bandit camps that appear with no explanation, with people who are absolutely crazed and bloodthirsty, yet appear to have enough mental capacity to build these camps, which our adventurers might fight and defeat and loot, and when they return the next day, they'll find the camp isn't there anymore. Everyone's dead, everyone's incapacitated, thrown in jail, it doesn't matter, but the grass is not even matted down anymore. The tree they cut down, or the things they bolted to one of the other trees to mark their territory simply don't exist anymore. It's like they were never there at all. There would be dungeons to find. Sometimes a dungeon might be there one day and it might not be there the next time. Maybe that's where all the treasures are coming from. Not just from rewards, from quests from these different factions, but because sometimes there appears to be loot in these places, these dangerous places that no one should go, inside of a mountain in the swamps, and you'll find it and you'll delve inside and look for treasure, fight the monsters within, and you'll come back the next day and it's once again just gone, inexplicably. A place that you traveled 1,000 times that might be a road well traveled by thousands of people, one day has a door next to it, which nobody's ever opened. And inside there are relics, notes from people that nobody might know, or maybe they do know. There are monsters within to be fought. There's treasure chests filled with things and valuables for people to find. And again, for the people living within this place, it is as dull as the sky is blue. It is a fact of life. There are adventurers from both sides who go out in the world to look for magic, look for artifacts, look for new things to either worship or put into manufacturing, things to expand their wealth, their knowledge, anything. And it is extremely dangerous because it appears that the god of the East does not answer the prayers in the West. Their borders are defined, and at one point the magic stops. And where those magic pieces do not contribute to, and where the magic ends for that god, that unnamed, unknowable force that has kept this Eastern civilization, the forest folk, alive, it is outside of their influence where, unfortunately, most people find the most adventure. It is also far from the borders and the walls and the farms of the West, where the same happens for them. It is on this middle ground. And because of that, and not just because of the constant warring happening on both sides, not just from the East wanting to protect their nature and the West wanting to industrialize and expand their territory, and both sides wanting to defend from each other, that there are military engagements happening regularly and frequently. Sometimes it is much more common in one place, sometimes it's much more common in another. But these people, they hate each other on a very, very personal level. They see the crimes committed by one faction as terrorists, and they see their own as the liberators and the heroes. It is a thing which you cannot conceivably reconcile very easily. Now, there is actually a third faction to this, one which I find to be probably the most entertaining faction, and the one that you cannot probably reasonably argue with, the one that, while both sides are suffering, this is the one having maybe a better time than the rest, because, well, it'd probably be something like kobolds. Really stupid, extremely numerous, and just profiting from both sides. They go in, they pick up the scraps after battle is done, they sell the rewards to either side for profit. They are extremely well organized, and while there's infighting, they typically have found a better place somewhere in these middle lines. They exist here much better than anyone else ever can. They have deep underground networks, they have trading posts, they go to either faction at will to sell their goods, and while everyone hates them, everyone recognizes You don't fuck with the kobolds. You don't fuck with these little tiny lizard folk who might be dumb as rocks, but if you mess with them, you are going to mess with all of them at once. And we cannot afford to allow them to stop giving us back our dead. You cannot allow them to give more to the enemy. And sometimes we can pay them to commit attacks on either faction. See, the only thing they care about is personal wealth and having a good time. So, while they're stupid and weak and dumb, they are also the best people to ask for information about the wild. They're people who will find these artifacts, these dungeons, these ancient creatures. They'll find them first, and they'll sell that information to whoever wants it most. They do not make alliances. They are strictly going after money and profit, or fancy trinkets, because, well, again, they're dumb as rocks. Money might not mean as much to them as a cool shiny rock to put on their collection. I just saw an entire branch of that tree fall down. What else? So, they're scavengers. They're monstrous. People are terrified of them as a group, maybe not as the individual, because, well, they hunt in packs, and they have no allegiances. You don't fuck with them, but they will most certainly fuck with you. They will attack factions at random, sometimes because one of them has fancy loot. Sometimes they do it because they just know that we can. However, if we retaliate against them, the consequences would be disastrous, because at least the other faction, the other civilization, the barbarians at the other side of the continent have their wherewithal about their minds to know that, hey, if we try to attack them where they live, it will not end well for us. The kobolds have no such reservations and will gladly go on campaigns of revenge if it means sacrificing dozens and dozens and hundreds of their own people. They will do it because they just want to. And I think that sounds like a very funny way to write characters. I think that sounds like something where they could be this really chaotic, neutral kind of thing where they just do whatever they want and they're widely having a good time doing it. So what about the actual story? Well, the story can go a number of ways. I would like to see how people try to reconcile the differences of these two factions. I want to see them try to find individual mysteries of whatever this god might be, the temples that they find, the bandits, these things that are incomprehensible. I want them to get to the why the war continues to rage, who continues to fund it, the role of the widespread corruption, all of it. I want them to explore and to find these things, but at the same time, I want to get a bit more cerebral. One idea that I have for a very significant character who might appear minor at first is just the shopkeeper. The first time players enter one of the stores, they would come face to face with a very well-dressed man in a small, humble store selling very unique magical artifacts. Things that are probably going to be wildly overpriced, or maybe not overpriced, but they're way out of their price range in general. Things that are very powerful, things that are always what they need at the right time at a cost. The person would be incredibly polite to them, and when they leave the store and turn around, the door is no longer there. From that point on, every time they enter a store, it doesn't matter whether they enter a store that sells potions, it doesn't matter if they enter a restaurant, it does not matter where they go, they always end up, the moment they cross the door, in the same building, with the same man selling them things. The things they always need most at the moment. Obviously, this raises a lot of questions and distrust, and there are very, very magical, powerful things on sale. It's always what we need most, it's what we desire most, so why don't we just take it? If somebody were to raise a weapon against this guy, I would have immediately a very easy to pass roll. Not investigation check, but arcana check, something along those lines, which would give that player an immense sense of dread. A sense that if you do this, you are going to die. It would be an incomprehensible force that washes over them, gives them the feeling that this individual, if they so much as try to suggest a robbery is going to take place in their store, they're going to die. They would have no real reason to, because I would make him a very nice individual, but he would always ask one question when they leave. One very simple question, but until you answer it, the doors will not open. The doors will not open. He asks, what is the meaning of life? Obviously, it sounds confusing at first. I think anybody might be, and they'll have a thousand different reasons, and especially early on in the campaign, people would have mixed opinions. Maybe the players themselves would bring their own answers into it. Maybe they'll just answer from the perspective of their character, the things they've seen so far. But the doors will not open until he gets an answer. If it's an answer that satisfies him, the doors will open, and the next time they come back, the prices will be a little bit lower. If you give him an answer he does not like, the door's still open. He'll tell you, I don't know if I like that answer, but I'll accept it. And the doors will open, you can leave, but when you come back, the prices will be a little bit higher. Now, probably wouldn't tell anyone this, but it would probably be nice reinforcements that players are thinking about this a bit more. Every time they go to the store, they have to answer this one strange question. This question that they have no real reason to answer. It's out of left field. It's out of the blue. It's strange. Now, this shopkeeper would play a significant role, which I will get to, but I would like to leave the mystery for a moment. This question of what is the meaning to life is one that would be asked numerous times by numerous people, maybe off the cuff, but usually at random. It would be people who are just like, I don't know, I'm just looking for a thing to talk about, or in a moment of downtime, they'll ponder things around that sense. It would be up to the dungeon master, probably myself if I could, I would really like to do that, of just the meaning of things, why things the way they are, why nobody ever comes back when they leave the island, why people just are the way they are, the why are the people on the other side of the continent the way they are. They'll ask these profound questions and they'll all come to different answers. Some people are just like, I don't care, that's just the way things are, I don't think about it. Other people might say, you know, maybe it's because we've done something wrong. Maybe it's because we're the better people and we need to make things right. Maybe it's a personal willpower, all these things. But I would always like to have every quest, every side quest, somehow wrap back around to it in a way that becomes unavoidable enough to make people constantly think, where is this leading? Where is this question going? Where does it have to land with the politics happening in the city? What does it have to connect with the differences that I see? What does that have to do with the kobolds? Why would the kobolds ever ask that question, even though they might at some point? I can imagine stories of going after long lost loved ones from one faction or another, quests of revenge, people who simply ask for things to be found and brought back to them that mean sentimental things. It could be in the scrambled writings of a madman in one of these dungeons that has no explanation written on the final page of what is the meaning of this. And it would always be different. I would like to have both factions always prophesize about what their purpose in this war is. Not just the cruelties happening on either side, but the justification for their own cruelty, things that they commit, the things they believe in. I want them to constantly be trying to basically propagandize the players into believing their cause. And the way that I would structure it is the people at the very bottom, people of the bottom rungs of those societies, are typically going to be in general agreement with each other. They're going to agree that, yeah, our side is the good side, and it's the crazy people on the other side that I do not trust. But then as you go up the higher in the ranks, it becomes something more than, well, it's because the evil on the opposite side, it becomes, well, if we stop this war, our economy is also going to collapse. If we stop this war, if we try to give up, we don't know what they'll do because we can't get messengers across. We don't know where they go. Both factions have the issue of when communications are attempted, negotiations are attempted, they always are broken by something. The people go missing. A bandit attack happens from strangers who they cannot identify the source of. These bandits that I mentioned would have no discernible reason to be there. They would be entirely alien. They would be this faction of this nebulous group who, when, oh my god, it would be this nebulous faction which you can't get answers from. You can't find their actual hideouts. You can't find their sanctums. You can't find their leaders. But they always appear at the worst times. These dungeons always appear with the loot that people really crave the most, the riches, the gold, the arts, the valuables, the things that could help either faction is usually found by that faction. Things are a little bit too coincidental all the time. You may have heard earlier on when I was mentioning the forest folk, the people on the east side. They would have a recurring issue of, we see the problems that we cause and we want to walk away from it. I use those words almost specifically, I think. And the West, the city folk, have the same issue. They have people who see the cruelty and they want to walk away from it. Well, that would come to a head in what I would consider the final act of this story, however it plays out, which I have significantly more details of the specific plot that I want to have happen if I were ever get to play it. I have specific plot points, characters, ideas, but for the sake of a video that's probably going to be an hour long, I really can't talk about all that because one, it is going to start raining again later, and two, it's just, I don't know if anyone has that patience. Mentioned there's the people in the west, the people in the east, there's these kobold faction in the middle, there's bandits, but there's another faction, one much more enigmatic. People who live below the surface of the entire place, of the entire continent. There would be people who live beneath the continent. And these people beneath the continent are also mysterious, but in a very mundane way. See, both factions, everyone knows that there are places that appear, or places that have existed forever. Places which you can visit, you can see the entrance, but it has the same magical properties of whatever is surrounding the entire continent. It would be, we can pass the door, but all of your memory from when you enter to when you leave is gone. I can watch somebody walk in, I can have a conversation with them from one side of the door to the next, but they will not remember it. And the worst part is when their memory comes back, it's not when they cross back through the door. It can be days to weeks later, but they're always in a delirious state up until that point. And they never bring anything back with them, intentionally so. They will tell you that they didn't want to bring anything out of the place they visited, but for reasons they refuse to elaborate on, including through torture. They would never explain what they saw. Beneath the continent is another faction of people who live in a perfect utopia, where there is no crime, there is no hunger, there is no disease. Everyone can pursue everything they want at all times. There is extreme lavishment. There are magics that people could not comprehend existing alongside machines, which makes life so easy and tolerable for everyone, no matter where they are, where the only issue is the boredom that you could ever have in living in such a perfect place. There are cities in the caves, just as there are open fields filled with flora so alien and otherworldly that it doesn't exist anywhere else. The weather is always perfect. There are times when it storms, but never for too long, only enough to remind you that the weather at every other place is just so good. It never lasts for too long. There is an abundance of wealth generated at all times from inconceivable places. These buildings are built by people who nobody knows. These factories came from somewhere that nobody can remember. The documentation inside is non-existent because there's nothing to document. This place has always been like this. And people wonder and they prophesize about the meaning of all of it, but they all inevitably realize that this place is perfect. Anywhere you turn, anywhere you want to go, the innermost desires you have, you will always find in just the right amounts. As there is no place without suffering. Both factions suffer, the kobolds suffer, the bandits certainly suffer when they appear and vanish, because they most likely get killed. The people underground suffer, but they suffer in ways that matter the most. They find that the suffering that they go through, be it physical or mental or emotional, it always leads them to better conclusions and better outlooks on life and to find things that are meaningful. There is excess of happiness, but not to a point that it makes them go mad or makes them become delirious when that excess stops. This is a more abstract idea, which is hard to exactly talk about in physical, concrete ways, and I would like to kind of keep it a bit of a mystery so that if you ever decide that any of these aspects are things that you want to go after, if you want to use in your own way, inspiration for something else, or just a conversation with somebody at work, go for it. It can be anything you want. Well, the party would eventually learn of this existence, of this place. Most people really don't know about it enough. Really nobody knows about it. Nobody knows that this place really exists. They know that there's these strange doors that make people kind of act really weird and loopy and abandon all their things within, but it's such an old mystery and widespread one that people stopped caring. People don't really get surprised anymore. Just as if you see a car on the street, you're not wowed by this mechanical marvel that burns the long decrepit remains of the dinosaurs and the plants to combust in a massive metallical rotating thing that spins the wheels of this monster which travels people faster than anyone could ever have gone before. You don't think about that. It's just a car. And this is just a weird door somewhere in a crevasse, somewhere in the desert, somewhere in a canyon at the top of a mountain. It is just that. It is mundane as the sky is blue. And of course, the party would want to venture there. I would have specific quests, gathering materials needed given by people who have studied these places, who have fragments of the puzzle put together, specific things needed from both factions, both ancient artifacts of unknown origins, which have no chemistry with anything else ever found, skeletal remains of people a bit too tall, a bit too rigid. But along the way, they would also routinely find the corpses long deserted, and armor so rusted, weapons so blunted that can never be used, but always seems to be, if this party of 4 finds these corpses, it's a dead party of 4. If there's a party of 3, there's a party of 3 they find dead. That might raise questions of, well, it's always the right number of people. And yeah, most of the stuff is useless, but is that us? Is that time? Is it time travel, alternate dimensions? Where are these things coming from? And I like that the questions you pose by that could always be a little bit more interesting than what the final actual answer would be. But spoiler alert, it would be significantly more mundane. It would be a little bit more cryptic and a lot more Lovecraftian. Through the story, I want players to see things and to witness things that are cruelty beyond comprehension. Things that have purpose and things that don't have purpose. Diseases intentionally manufactured by the forest folk, the suffering and the barbarity of the war and the labor needed by the people in the West. I want to see them come up with their own explanations for why things the way they are, and I want them to become disillusioned with both sides. I want them to realize that something is wrong with this place. Something is keeping the suffering going. When we try to have diplomatic meetings, when we try to solve these conflicts, something goes wrong. A herd of animals descends upon the travelers from one faction sent as diplomats, or an earthquake happens that should not be able to happen in this place and kills or reroutes everyone from the other side. Things that are inexplainable, that they have to be coming from below. It has to be coming from the inside of these doors, and these ideas won't be original. They will be things that others have thought of, but the attempts to explain it are so far gone that it's mundane. We've given up on trying. What exists is what exists. Just like how we have oxygen in the air, which is perfect for us to live in, the environments that these individual people live in is perfect for their way of life and their faction to continue. So the widespread questioning, doesn't happen. It has become mundane. So, magical artifacts left by a long-lost group of people, a bit too tall, a bit too strong, with markings and regalia that matches no known records from either faction or the kobolds, the bandits, or anything, left in the capitals of each place, or maybe left somewhere as dull as some grandma from one side had this as a centerpiece on her table, and it was there for 100 years, passed down generation to generation. But it turns out that it begins to have a certain type of reaction when brought over near this other artifact, etc., to form what would essentially become a key, or a shield, or a barrier, something which is not too interesting, but it makes a cohesive shape. It makes you feel a bit tingly. It makes you feel like your skin begins to crawl a little bit. When you're nearby, it makes you feel like there's goosebumps popping up on the back of your neck. There's something not right about it. That's mostly where it ends. And through conversations with the kobolds specifically for this piece of information, and through buying information from the shopkeeper himself, they will tell you in some way, in some riddle or some mystery, to bring it to the door and to see what happens. And you'll find that when you enter, you do not lose control of your character. You do not lose access to the things you've been doing. There is no blackout. There is no lapse in judgment. There is none of this. It's just you walk inside and you remember. And you walk back out and you're fine. You walk back in and you continue to be okay. And you go down and you find this ancient, wondrous, mystical place. Find all these splendors, these things that make you never want to leave, everything you could possibly need. But you'd also find answers for why things are the way they are. Turns out, there is no God in the East. There is not. It's manufactured by the people below in their own rituals. For their perfect utopia requires suffering. They suffer in the ways that only they think that they deserve to suffer. And the utopia that they have created is something which is so perfect that they have deemed that, while cruel, it must continue because you can imagine no other way of life. And any effort we've made to mitigate the disasters above has caused disaster below. Anytime that we try to help the people above us, it ends up causing destruction on both sides by this very continent itself, by the animals, the plants, the storms, the weather, all of it. We're powerless to do anything about it. And so we live in secret because we are ashamed that we cannot help. Turns out that they might be in the wrong too. I would like to see creatures that do not exist. I would like to see variations of monsters that live down there for people who are trying to dig too deep. I would like to find pamphlets or... There's a deer. The books questioning the origins of the place, all of it, I want it to end up with the realization that, in fact, everything is manufactured. Everything has been preordained. Everything is happening as intended because, well, the giant magical barrier surrounding this giant continent is but a glass case. Something has decided to keep this continent, the people on it, the people below and above, as pets. Some incomprehensible being, something that's pulling the strings, which tends to it like an ant farm. When they see that they need food, they add food in their own way. But that has to come with problems and sacrifice and things outside of the comprehension of our characters and their heroes, etc. But it's not a cruel God. It's not a cruel presence. It's not one that causes these problems for no reason. It is because somehow that is the food that keeps this entire civilization moving, and to stop the suffering would collapse everything in on itself and be it would be irreparable. So I'm talking a lot of crazy, weird, abstract ideas. And again, there's more to it that I would like to talk about, things that maybe I should write down, but I want at the end, I want the players to have to wonder what the purpose of life is. I want them to have to ponder these things, to think that this is all fake. These are manufactured events that we have discovered. These are things that if we try to stop it, the world itself revolts against us. Maybe that is where we found these adventurers, these dead adventurers at, who always seem to be in the same numbers as us to find meaning in something. Is it something trying to communicate for us to stop, or is it a defense mechanism by whatever is out there controlling and pulling the strings? And in the end, the only solution for these players, the only possible outcome of the most good, is the personal realization of where they belong in the cycle of suffering and in the cruelty happening within the world. It would be to determine which side has the best people for their individual morality, all of it. So where does the shopkeeper come in? I would like to think that a big inspiration for this is those who walk away from... I can't remember the name of the book. I'll put it somewhere on the screen, maybe. I know it starts with an O, whatever. The premise of it is that there is a perfect society. There's a society which has no suffering and no problems, none of it. However, for this society to function, it relies on the endless suffering of one person, a child. Life is perfect. You have everything you want. Everything is in the right amounts. There is no crime, no poverty. There is no sickness. There is happiness everywhere that you can look. But there is the endless, unending suffering of one child kept in the dark. everyone knows of them. Every single person can see this child, is taught of this child, is able to see this thing that cannot be called human anymore. They see it suffering and they understand that the only way for life to continue is to continue the suffering. Who is the shopkeeper then? He is someone who walked away from the perfect life because he saw it as too much. Or maybe that is all a ruse. It is something to discover because he wants you to discover. Maybe he is the one guiding these adventurers to their deaths, giving them just what they need to push a little farther, to cause just enough conflict in this perfect order of things to keep something flowing, some amount of suffering that is required by the universe, by this continent, this strange place. Maybe he is the reason that there are so many dead adventurers from both sides. Maybe that is the reason for his existence. Maybe not. I don't know. I would like to do something with this setting. I would like to find a group of people who would like to play it or something and really expand on it, talk about it, and come up with more concrete plot ideas. Things that are through a combination of talk and for deliberation and ideas, both good and bad, to sift it down to its finest components and to expand upon those, to come up with side characters and mysteries and conflicts to be had. And again, I love themes of political corruption and especially when good characters need to do morally dubious things. I love when that stuff happens in film and books. I love when good people need to do monstrous things for the greater good. Shout out to Andor. That show is amazing. If you haven't watched it, you should. I give it glowing reviews. It is not a Star Wars show. It is a unbelievably amazing masterpiece of political commentary and the cruelty needed to what it needs. It is a masterpiece of political commentary and what it means to be good and what evils you need to commit to be a good person out of love. Glowing reviews, but I will talk no more about that. This story, in whatever shape it would end up in, I just think it would be fun. And yet, you may have noticed that I mentioned that again. I don't think I will ever see this come to fruition. Just, I don't have any belief that I'll meet the right people to expound on this idea. I don't have any belief that I'll find the right people to stick with it for the probably years it would take to complete this story. Embarrassing story myself. I will not talk about it any more than this to anybody because it's embarrassing and cringy. I did a multiple year long like role play story writing thing with a group of friends, like two other friends in a fictional setting, and it went on for like 5 consecutive years, and we did it through like text through a messaging thing that doesn't exist called like Uvu or something. It's cringe, but it was one of the most fulfilling experiences I've ever had in my life, with characters that in complete arcs in a setting which already, while it existed, we had the entire story take place in the preamble to it. I am not going to expound on it any further than that because it is cringe. And while we didn't do anything that what I would consider like degenerate stuff, like there was no weird shit that happened. I kept it very much like political intrigue, monsters, demons, aliens, uh, impossible technologies and combats and all that stuff, all without dice rolls or anything, because we just wrote it through texts basically, and it went for years, and it was amazing. I would like to experience that again sometime, maybe, but this video, this idea, it exists alongside my issues, my personal problems. It exists alongside the cruelty of this very real, very tangible world. It exists along with my mental illness, my depression, my unwillingness to see this life through. You can read into that as much as you want, or just watch the previous videos and you'll see the depths of what I mean. And I would like to talk about it and to share any idea, no matter how good, no matter how bad, because I can have these grand ideas in my head, and then even as I was speaking them here, I realized that a lot of it is flawed and not as fleshed out as I think I could have said it. Or maybe it's not enough, maybe it's not good enough in general, but then again, other people could take the ideas and do something more with it. Even just one person. Maybe someone comes to an idea for their own Dungeons and Dragons campaign, or a short story they want to write themselves, or maybe they even just begin to think about what it means to suffer in the correct ways in life, and what the meaning of it all is, or comes to some conclusion about religion, philosophy, their friends, their family, all this stuff. Maybe it just is a building block to a realization in 15 years that began or was aided at some point in this strange conversation that I'm having with myself in the middle of the woods, trespassing on someone else's property, and they won't even remember this video or me or anything. Maybe somehow, in some way, it is the building blocks to a better person somewhere. Maybe it is. Maybe the meaning to my life is to share the suffering, internal and external, by myself, inflicted on myself, inflicted by others, the world, the physical and mental realities that I exist in, to make someone else come to realizations or to a better life that I will never see due to distance or death. Or maybe there was no purpose at all. And maybe I'm just some weird fucking guy on the internet with really fucking weird hair that never seems to do what I want it to do because, I don't fucking put anything in it. I don't have enough personal interest to do that. Maybe I'm just some guy with mental health issues and a crumbling mental health life with no future ahead of him, who's just rambling into the void about random stupid shit because maybe deep down I could philosophize all that I want. Maybe I could come to these wild conclusions of strange proportion, big and small, and grandiose ideas and ideas of doom and despair. But in reality, maybe a part of me is just doing it because I have no free will. Because just as air would flow into a vacuum, maybe the specific combination of molecules and atoms and electrons in my body flow towards the point at which makes the most sense for them, and I have no actual free will. Or maybe the free will I have is so overwhelming that I'm paralyzed by choice, and that those paralysis of decisions and the emotions that come with them have led me to either stall or to make the wrong choices out of necessity for myself. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying pseudo profound bullshit because it makes me feel good in the moment, despite it meaning literally nothing at all. Who knows? I don't. I don't. I don't have the introspection myself to come to those conclusions. I have suspicions and opinions, but frankly, all this is meaningless. All of this random chance and things outside my control, and things within my control which I cannot actually handle. All of this. I'd like to conclude every video now, I think, with discussions of how I feel about it, as this is still a personal journal channel. I feel depressed. I feel hopeless. I feel angry and disappointed in how there are things which I'll never see to fruition due to personal inability, due to things outside of my control and within my control, which I'm just at fault for. I feel depressed because, well, I don't know a time where I really wasn't depressed. And yet I feel, for the moment, a bit better, maybe. Not enough to think that I will be fulfilled when I get home or after I edit the video or upload it, or feel good tomorrow, or feel any satisfaction from any of this that I've done. But for the moment, I feel a bit better, just because I find some pleasure in talking. And yet I feel despair in knowing that every sentence has to end. Every discussion, every talk, everything. I feel disappointed that I don't know people in places to help me expand the things that I believe in, either in conversation or through practicality. And I feel frustrated that, unfortunately, to do anything good in life that I want to see requires an excess of money and connections, which I will never have. I feel unable to make change, and I feel like the only thing I can do is talk and have people listen. And I feel a lot of displeasure in knowing that there are people who will listen with no takeaways, with no profound thought, with no introspection or investigation into deeper meanings, either implied or not. I feel disappointed that people very often just accept things for what they are and they don't take it any further than that. I don't know. That's another strange discussion to have, maybe for another time. I still feel like I am in the epilogue of my own life. I feel, and I've journaled about it, and that maybe these momentary moments of lucidity, as I'll call it, is akin to the death spasms of a corpse, the terminal lucidity of someone on death's doorstep. I still feel like the end is nigh, for me at least. For the world too, but especially for me. And I also feel like I need to get bug spray because these mosquitoes are insane, and I don't like killing any bugs in general because they're just doing what they exist to do. They're not evil. They're just doing what they want because they are programmed to do so. And yet again, I find myself thinking that maybe I would be happier if I was not capable of this pseudo-intellectual bullshit thinking and just able to accept things as they are, radical acceptance, which I've tried and I cannot fulfill, or some belief that all things good in life are because of God and everything bad is because of free will, and to never actually question how both of those things just cannot fucking be absolute. I can't stand the weird religious discussions that even sometimes in this comments where it's like, oh dude, just turn to God. And it's like, dude, I cannot find a faith in that, frankly, because the more I read into it, and I read a lot into religion, extreme amounts of religion. Like, dude, if you want to have a serious crisis of identity, if you're deeply religious, look up the origins of the modern take on the rapture, which originated in the 1830s. Like, just go look at that, okay? And come to your own conclusions, and then continue to delve into like the Old Testament and the amount of things that are intentionally cut out of modern publications of the Bible, and the insane cruelty that happens within. Because frankly, there's people who say, oh, the Old Testament doesn't matter, and it's like, dude, I don't see anywhere in the New Testament that the new parts of the Bible that have any reason to look at the old shit and just ignore it. Okay, holy shit, dude. I cannot worship a God whose miracles began and ended 2,000 years ago, who sees genocide happening all the time, all over the world, especially in the last like just 20 years, my lifetime, and has done nothing about it. The multiple genocides, who loves us so dearly that he gave us free will to obliterate ourselves, and then does nothing to do anything about it. It's like, I could talk at length about religion, my views on it, and how there are messages within it which I find truly valuable, things which I agree with fully, things which I think are very profound stories and messages which I have internalized, things such I think make me a better person, but the conclusion at the end of it is not one that I find satisfying with religion. But this is getting off topic for a thing about D&D. I still don't know how to end these videos. So, until next time, maybe. To the guy who commented saying that he would actually like a video where I talk at length about beetles because they're my favorite animal, I might do that one. Maybe. Thank you specifically, because you're here all the time. I appreciate it.